Good afternoon, Lauren. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. I had two tacos and I had some queso
Oh,
and a Mexican Coke. Yeah,
and you didn't share.
I didn't. You're in I
I see
think
how it
you're,
is.
yeah, yeah. When you figure out how to DM food, we'll get it done. Yeah. But yeah, welcome onto the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I know, this was probably, it's about a month out from when we first touched base. So I
Yeah.
appreciate your flexibility.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for the people, obviously your audience, I've checked out a couple of your streams. They know who you are, but to the people who don't know who they are, who may be watching this for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you and what do you do?
So, my name is GlitterXplosion or Lauren, whichever
Mhm.
works. Um, Now, as of very recently, I am a full-time freelance esports talent and content creator. I stream on Twitch and do a lot of variety gaming, but I lean pretty heavily into the BR side of things.
Got it. And for those, so this podcast also goes to a bunch of people who don't understand video games. What is BR?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's even better. So BR means battle royale. It's a genre of video games where a bunch of people are dropped onto a map with nothing. You have to loot up, try to get as many weapons and gear as you can, and last man standing wins.
Pretty intense. Pretty intense. Because when I first heard BR, it's funny. Like before battle royales really exploded. Like when I heard BR, I'm a Halo guy, so it's like
Okay,
I think a battle rifle.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because yeah, the idea of this is to share this to people who may not understand gaming from that perspective, like we do. Like we're involved and we understand all the lingo and it's yeah. Thank you for sharing that because battle royales have been a challenge for me to get into.
They have
Yeah,
definitely kind of had a really big boom in gaming and esports in general, probably in the past 3-ish years. They're definitely one of the most popular categories right now. So really, really fun to get into.
and I think from I want to get your perspective on like what do you think makes battle royales so much more attractive to the audience, like to the gaming audience?
Well, one, I think from a viewership perspective, especially for people that might be new to the genre, it's relatively easy to understand, right? It's like
Mhm.
Hunger Games. And that's something that most people conceptually can grasp onto really quickly. Whereas sometimes there's a steeper learning curve with other esports and it's harder for people to kind of break that barrier of entry, right?
Mhm.
And then from like a player side of things, it is it's got every aspect of challenge when it comes to competition. You can play solos if you want to kind of do your own thing and run around and try to be the best out of anywhere from 60 to 120 players on a map, right?
It's
And then if
insane.
that's not necessarily your thing, you have the options at this point in pretty much every VR to play in duos or trios or quads. So you can play with your friends, you can play with your community, and still have that challenge there without maybe as much stress as exists when you're kind of playing by yourself because that
Yeah.
part does get a little bit scary at the end. Plus, there's always like the gun skill aspect of it, which for anybody that plays any FPS will enjoy, period. And it changes up the stereotypical PvP
Yeah.
aspect of FPS. So
Yeah, I mean, because I'll tell you, I'm passionate. I'm deeply passionate about like Halo, Gears of War, Call of Duty, and it's like, you know,
Halo Infinite.
please don't. Oh, no. Uh, well, I'll get into my feelings about that. But I love the esport because I'm passionate about the game. But I can only imagine for someone if we're trying to attract people into this like if we're trying to make this more inclusive, like games like Halo and Gears of War. I mean, they are highly
Hard.
technically skilled games
Yeah.
and it's just, you I love it, but how is the game ever going to grow by doing that? You know?
It's
Uh,
exactly, and that's probably the biggest issue for esports in general is like we need it to be way more mainstream, and
mm,
there needs to be games that are mainstream in order for that to happen.
yeah.
Like Rocket League is another good example of that. It's
Mhm.
car soccer. Anybody can figure that out, you know? Like that's easy and we need
Yeah.
more of that.
Yeah. I remember when someone first told me what Rocket League was, they're like, it's like RC soccer car. I'm like, "What?" Like,
Yeah.
but I suck at it, but it's incredibly entertaining to watch, like,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Especially when you see like people that are really, really good at it
Yeah.
and they can do all of the aerial side of things for Rocket League. I'm sitting there being like, I don't know what just happened, but I like
Exa
it.
Exactly. It's a game that, like, I used to, like, wind down, like, I'll wind down. I
Yeah.
suck at it. I have no drive to become better at it. None. None. But yeah. So, Infinite, I you it feels like you just ripped the Band-Aid right off again.
We
Damn it.
had to. You said Halo, and I was like,
I
uh-oh.
know. I know. Before I share my thoughts, what are your thoughts on them pushing back the game till 2021?
Okay. From like a developer side of things, I get it. I'm sure there was a reason for it. From
Mhm.
a marketing and PR and dedicated, loyal fan base that has been around for like a decade at this point, I don't get it because it's so harmful because people have
Mhm.
been looking forward to it for so long. And I can only hope that that pushback means that it literally will be flawless because it's one of those things where if it's not after being pushed back, there will be
Yep.
triple the backlash.
Yeah. I 100% agree, and, like, as as a loyalist, as a diehard, like, yeah, that was the game that literally changed my entire life. Like,
Right.
it was the first game that, like, I felt connected to a community, like, I just was obsessively grinding for it for no reason, and it was like, you know, at my perspective on it is, like, we've seen a rushed 343 release, and it was
Yes.
not pretty. Ooh, like, when they tried to just remaster the classics for Xbox One, that was the biggest shit show I think I'd ever seen. Like, the
Yeah.
game was actually unplayable for, like, a month. And so, reliving that, I don't really wanna have to live that again. Like, they've been putting the right chess pieces, they've been playing the right moves, they've been doing a lot of things that have been really good, so I'm just like, "You know what? 2021 could mean January 2021.
Right.
It could mean February."
Could it could be first quarter or it could be third. I would
Yeah.
hope that that's not the case. But,
Yeah.
you know, also to, defend them a little bit, we've seen
Yeah.
Cyberpunk do the same thing.
Yep. Yep.
I think the main difference was that the second Cyberpunk decided they pushed back the first time, it's been so transparent. And
Yeah.
so everybody's kind of sitting there being like, okay, that sucks, but we get it. I almost feel like they need a little bit more of that hyper transparency on the 343 side of things because it would make the
Mhm.
community feel so much better about understanding why things have to get pushed back
Yep.
and you kind of maintain the hype a little bit as opposed to people being like, I've been waiting forever this, or like, well, yeah, you have been waiting forever, but if it came out tomorrow and it was terrible, you'd be pissed that you waited forever for it and then it was
Right.
bad.
Right. Exactly. Like, my thing is, like, we've waited 5 years. What is another 6 months at the most? You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, you have a great perspective on that, and it's like, because the Halo community is one of the hardest ones to please, and you bring up a really good point about Cyberpunk, and it's like, I feel like if that's what's needed to make this franchise explode, that's great. And I even saw, Say in one of the Halo pro players, like, he's like, "That's fine, you push this back," but literally reiterated what you said. He's like, "We need hyper transparency on multiplayer."
Yeah.
Like, if you give us an option with multiplayer, and hopefully this means more room for, like, beta access, you know what I mean? Like, if you give us a taste, if you keep the hunger alive, I mean, they're doing great on marketing because I bought literally every Halo Infinite item that has gone for sale since they've done this. So,
You drank the Kool-Aid.
I so drank the Kool-Aid. So, it's my childhood. It's like, if they can do this, it's gonna be great. So, I mean, either way though, I've said this before, like, the game, in my opinion, like, if I didn't enjoy the game personally, but if the franchise was furthered from it, I'd have to be okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, if they
Yeah.
do all these things and it's like, as long as it carries the legacy that Bungie started, I could hate the game, but if the newer generation found a lot of success in it, I'd have to just, like, put down my controller, you know?
And that's
But
always like the line that the developers have to toe, right? Because it's all about, having the OG fan base happy, but also being able to continuously bring
yeah,
in new players.
right, right. I think they did a fantastic job with this. So from the limited beta that we saw, like, they kept the artwork, which gives the nostalgic fanboys
Right.
everything to talk about, like me. Like, that was so incredibly amazing to see. But they added additional movements. They didn't enhance it so much, but they made Chief a badass. Like, I'm like, I think
It's
this is exact.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's the perfect recipe. So I mean, open world. Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited. But, so you're obviously a gamer, you would have not gotten into this space if you weren't a gamer. I gotta ask, what was the game growing up that, like, did it for you?
See, I always struggle answering this question because
Mhm.
we actually grew up in a at the time, I don't think I realized it, but we grew up in a very nerdy household. So, like, I had I still to this day, I think somewhere stored in our basement, probably, we have NES, SNES, 64. I think we still have a
Ooh.
functioning GameCube. We have every single Xbox, every single PlayStation. And then my dad started teaching us how to build PCs when we were like 10. And we played like every single educational PC game
Wow.
that we could have played as children. And so I never even like really thought that it was atypical in any way. I just assumed everybody played lots of video games all the time.
Mhm.
But I guess the ones that always stick out the most are 64 games because those are the ones that I think I put the most time in during my childhood. So it would probably be like Ocarina of Time or like this kind of like the standard ones. But
Mhm.
and this is always super blasphemous and people get upset with me. However, one of my favorite Game Boy games at the time was Pokemon Yellow. And the reason it's yellow is because I had two brothers. One brother always got red, and one brother got blue, so they could trade together, and they would never trade with me. So I always had to get
Ooh.
yellow so I could have all the Pokemon and play by myself.
I absolutely love that. See, that's so funny. Like I grew up with the what was your like were you playing those on like the Game Boy Color with like the
Yes.
worm light? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That like where you couldn't system link with your friends in the dark if you wanted to because
Uh-huh.
that connection was only system link or worm light. Kids these days won't understand the
Yep.
struggle. So that's I mean, that's really cool. I mean, you grew up like cuz I'll tell you that's a vastly different environment than I grew up in. So being in this environment, like having literally every console, like what I guess growing up like past that, like what got you into like I guess how did you kind of like find your way into casting?
That is a very I like stumbled my way into game. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, yeah. We're here
Was
for it.
it was literally just something that I always did for fun. I
Mhm.
feel like it was one of those things where growing up that was not a realistic job avenue.
Yeah.
Like unless you were going into like development side, like there was like nothing else you could do past that. And I wasn't going to code or I wasn't going into those types of career paths, so that wasn't
Sure.
an option for me. So I literally did college and then law school and then decided that law school was not what I wanted to do because I initially was looking at being an agent for athletes. I wanted to go into sports law.
Oh, nice.
Um realized that wasn't going to happen. Left law school, then went and got my master's in interior design. And during my master's, I was playing lots of League of Legends, but I had always been playing video games my whole life, so that was nothing new.
Mhm.
But for your master's thesis, you're allowed to pick anything under the sun as long as it's original idea, and you have to design a 25,000 square foot commercial venue for whatever your original idea is. And
Wow.
at the time, commercial esports venues didn't exist here. They existed in Europe
Mhm.
and like small centers in like Asia and the Philippines.
And
They
when was
weren't
this kind of like
here.
when was that like when you had to do this?
This was 2015.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Um, so I decided that I was going to, for an entire year, deep dive esports, the back end side of business of all that stuff, and talk to everyone that was running commercial venues in Europe that I could get my hands on, and talk to colleges that were starting to offer esports programs and learn everything that I could about it. And then did my entire master's thesis on commercial esports venues and designed one top to bottom. And uh graduated and then looked at my parents and I was like, listen, I just did a lot of schooling. I will go get a job, but I want 6 months before I go get a job. I just need to decompress. That was a
Yeah.
lot of higher education. My
Yeah.
brain is mush. And they were like, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine. You totally deserve it. You did way more schooling than most people.
Yeah.
That's fine. And in those 6 months, my boyfriend at the time was super into Twitch and was like, you know what? I think you've got a great personality for streaming. You should just try it and see what happens. So during that downtime, I started streaming and I got super, super into it and started networking with people. Went to my first TwitchCon, and at that time was very involved in the H1Z1 community. That was the first battle royale that I had gotten into,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and met a ton of people at that TwitchCon that ended up kind of creating this whole network of esports friends. One of those friends ended up um, getting me a job on Elevate, and from there I started cultivating an entire BR
Wow.
department for Elevate. Took my team from Elevate and then created the team on LG with Ninja, the PUBG and the H1Z1 team. I was the coach and manager of that squad and put that whole squad together. And then um, venues in Las Vegas started seeing my master's thesis that I had put up online. And then I ended up getting work out in Las Vegas, starting to consult for all the hotels on the strip, helping them
Wow.
build up their esports venues. So I ended up moving out to Las Vegas to do that. And then when I moved out here, Rogue kind of headhunted me off of LG. And then while all of that was going on, I was still in the H1 community and played in, I believe it's 2017. I played in the 2017 uh the tournament that they had at TwitchCon
Oh, wow.
and won a bunch of money and became the highest paid woman in the game. And then when that happened, then that's how the hosting side of things started cuz
Yep.
H1 was like, "You're a
Wow.
great positive female role model. Would you like to host our pro competitive events?" And I was like, "I've never done that before, but that sounds fun. Let's do that." And then
Yeah.
that somehow snowballed into working like every other. I did a ton of hosting work for the first year, and then I
Mhm.
got really into Apex and started working with ESPN Esports as a analyst and correspondent for them on Apex, and then got picked up by Apex directly as an analyst for them, and now I'm an analyst for PUBG Mobile for their World League stuff, and I just kind of have lived in the BR world since I just did a Fortnite event. I've worked with Netflix, I've worked with the NHL, I've worked with the UFC.
Wow.
Um, so it literally, it was like one thing happened and then it all just kind of went from there.
That's insane. That is absolutely insane. So that 6-month thing turned into, how many years has this been happening?
Yeah, this is now we're this I'm 4 years in, or this is like the beginning of our 5th year or something like that.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. No, it's cool to see how that happened because one of my questions was gonna be, like, going through all that school, was there ever any regret for doing all of that school?
My student loans say yes. my, my student loans are a painful mountain that I pretend just doesn't exist. I just pull the curtain across it and I pretend it doesn't exist because that there are so many times where I look at that and I'm like, I wasted so much education. But then on the flip side of things, like, did I?
It
Yeah, that debt sucks, but like that entire path is what got me here today. So
Mhm.
if I had changed anything, would I be in the same position? Because there's a possibility that I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, you saw, like, the people in Vegas saw your master's, your master's thesis, and it was like,
Right.
if that hadn't happened, like, that's what I
Exactly.
picked. Yeah. It's kinda crazy that journey, like, the thing I love about this industry is there's no one linear path to this.
Yes, I wish people understood that. I wish people understood that so badly because people ask me all the time how to like get into the industry, and I'm like, there's no good answer. I hate that question because I feel so helpless
Yeah,
in my response because from my personal experience, what I have found is the only formula to even get into the industry is a combination of networking, which is just period in any industry. It's that you
yeah,
need to know people. If you're
yep,
not willing to put yourself out there, it's just never going to work. Networking is always number one, but then you have to be self motivated. You have to be able to take this big of an opportunity and blow it up into this. Like
yeah,
you, because the amount of times that working on any of the esports orgs, for example, I was asked, "Do you know how to do this?" And I'm sitting there going, "Absolutely not. I have no freaking clue what you're talking about." But
right,
I'm outwardly, I'm going, "Yeah, absolutely." And the first thing I do is I sit down and I YouTube learn everything. I teach myself whatever I need to know from top to bottom, and I don't tell anybody that I had no clue what they were talking about. And next time, I'm better prepared. I've learned a new skill now, but it also prevents someone from going to ask somebody else. The
right,
one thing that I always did was make myself invaluable. If I not saying no is really, really hard. Sometimes it can be exhausting and it's stressful and it's definitely putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. But it's
Mhm.
probably the only thing that saved me multiple times because I became the one person that was like the jack of all trades. Everyone just got to the point where people like, oh, Glitter can do that. Just give it to Glitter. And so then it got to the point where no one could ever fire me because if I left, I had so many jobs that I was taking care of, everything would fall apart, you
Yeah.
know? And so becoming that invaluable resource is so important because esports is such a new industry. People don't even know what they're looking for skill wise. They don't know what degrees they need you to
Yep.
have.
Yep.
They don't know what experience they want you to have. They just want to know, can you do it?
Right.
And if you go, I don't know, then they're going to go, well, we'll find somebody who can then. And they don't really know what that means either. They still don't know who that somebody is. You have to pretend to be that somebody and just fake it until you make it.
Yeah. I think that's you hit the nail on the head with that, and for any advisor, like, that's probably the best advice you can have because it's like I think a lot of growing up is, like, not because like, we're not experts in anything, but not knowing how to do something, but it's like, if you're motivated to do it, you're gonna find a way to actually get that shit done,
Yeah.
you know? That's awesome. I mean, it's cool to see it because like I stumbled into this a different way. Like I just, I had a dream, like I have this dream that I'm still pursuing of wanting to create my own esports team, but it's like, okay, it's like I have no business experience. I knew nobody in the industry. Like
Yep.
no one. Never been to a single
That's the
event.
hardest part.
Yeah, it is, and it's like I remember my first event I went to, I just all of a sudden expected people to come to me like they actually knew me. It's like, "Bro, you don't know anybody, like, you gotta go put yourself out there," you know? And it was a humbling experience, but it's like you kinda just trip and fall and stumble your way through this shit,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Even
Gotta
like
ask,
on
like
the talent side of things, a lot of times my agents are like, "Can you do this?" And I'm like, "I have no clue how to do that." They're like, "Are you comfortable learning?" And I'm like, "How many days do I have?" And typically they're like, 2, maybe? And I'm like, "Sure, why not? Let's just see what happens." But that is how I've managed to try shoutcasting. I'm now more of an analyst than I
yeah,
am I've done desk hosting, stage reporting, stage hosting, and
yeah,
it that's I think that's people's biggest barrier is their fear of failure. Everybody screws shit up. That's just gonna happen. It's about if you can do that gracefully, accept it, learn from it, and then be better because of it. Or if it's one of those things that you allow to hinder you, or when it does happen, you just get so mad and frustrated about that it doesn't end up benefiting you in any way.
right, and worst case scenario, guess what? If you fail and you figure out that you're not willing to move past it, guess what? This shit isn't for you, and you know
Exactly.
that now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you hit the nail on the head because it's like the worst like people mess up all the time. It's like especially like we're humans. There's no perfection. There's no it's good to have a goal to strive towards, but if you like are always trying to be that person and never allow yourself to like be cool with your mistakes, like not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, like you like embracing those mistakes, I think is something that a lot of people struggle with. People this in this generation don't know how to take an L. You know what I mean? And like gracefully take an L to where it's like, okay, cool. You have an L, but it's not the end of the world. As long as you
Yeah.
don't make the same mistake twice, you're fine. But yeah, I dig it. That's awesome. So you've done a lot of stuff on the desk. Like what out of all the positions that you've done, like what is the one that like you're the most excited about or that you've had the most fun doing?
I love analysis. I never thought that I would either because when I went into it, I was like, hosting, this is it. I get to like interview people. I loved making the pros feel comfortable because a lot of times, like when you watch esports events, pros can kind of clam up and they get nervous in front of the camera. I
Yes.
always like loved being able to be the person that so many pros that I'd worked with were like, she's the only person I'll talk to. If she's not interviewing me, I'm not doing an interview. Like I liked that because I liked being that friend for people and I felt comfortable kind of directing the show, like throwing to this or kind of coming out of that. And I always assumed that, and this is probably where imposter syndrome kicks in a little bit. I think everybody in esports has a little bit of it. I would sit there and be like, well, I don't know as much as the boys do. Meanwhile, I have thousands of hours in the exact same game and the same amount of experience and playing at the same level, but I'd sit there and be like, "Oh, but they've been doing it longer. They probably know more." And I had to stop that really, really. That took like a good chunk of time. And when I finally
Yeah.
kind of just went for the analysis side of things, I love it. I think that's probably the most fun that I have out of all of the roles that I've tried. I think I'm the most comfortable with analysis, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think it's the most fun out of all of it.
That's awesome. I mean, you touched on a good point. Like, this is definitely a heavily, always has been, hopefully that changes, but a heavily male dominated industry.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, you are my first female guest on the show, and it's pretty, pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie,
I'll
you
take
know?
that feather in my cap, though.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so doing that, I mean, what has probably been, because I see all the Twitter posts, like I see all these things that women have to go through, especially with a lot of the movements that have been happening. Like, what has probably been like the toughest part for you to make it as a female in this industry?
Um, I think the hardest part, and to be fair, there obviously are
Yeah,
a ton of people in the industry that are very aware and actively working to kind of right that, right?
yeah,
The unintentional sexism, honestly, because I think
sure,
for the most part that gaming is actually a very inclusive community. I think there's just some older mindsets that just think, some gender should do X and not X, and that just doesn't really apply anymore.
yep, yep,
I think the hardest part though is it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? That small group of people is one of the loudest groups on the internet. So
yeah,
it feels way more overwhelming when that negative comes in than it actually is. That's not the majority mindset a lot of the time. And that's hard
sure,
to work through because you're hearing a lot more of that. I think,
yeah,
there's a lot of people that assume you get where you are in esports or in gaming as a woman because you're a woman. It's like that
yeah, yeah,
that they're trying to fill the female role type thing, not because you've
right,
earned it, not because you've worked for years to get there. It's
right,
just that assumption that, oh well, they had to fill a spot. So, and you're
yeah,
sitting there being like,
yeah,
okay, I mean, if you want to think that, that's fine, but I have the next today alone, I've got the next 6 hours to prove you wrong. And
right,
oh wait, we're in a pro league. You're stuck with me for 30 days. Well, this is going to be a long one for you then. You know, like so it's like thick skin. And I get asked this question a lot. It's like, what advice do you give to like young women that are trying to do this
mhm,
type of stuff? Thick skin is one of the biggest things that you can have in this industry because like I said, you're going to have so many allies. There's going to be so many awesome people that are going to help you
yeah,
along the way. And I wouldn't be where I was if it weren't for the help of a lot of people along the way.
sure,
But you just have to learn to take everything that's bad with a grain of salt. Sometimes you will get actual criticism from maybe like a production team or a fellow talent or something like that. And that's normal workflow. If you
sure,
can't take
sure,
criticism, period, that's a different problem. But
right,
being able to ignore just the absolute bullshit on the internet, that's a whole other just pretend they don't exist and cultivate the community that you want to be a part of. A lot of times people say that like their Twitch channel is really, really rough sometimes, but obviously size kind of plays a factor in this depending on how
sure,
big your channel is, but
sure,
you what you cultivate is what your community becomes. What you allow in your community will become a set standard. So if you are shutting down that type of
mm,
negativity or any
mhm,
trolls or like that right from the get-go, people are smart. You can even turn people around because sometimes it could just be a kid that doesn't know any better and they think they're being
right,
funny. And you can take 5 minutes and be like, actually, that's not really cool. And we have a really awesome group of people here that will hang out with you, that will play games with you. We've got
yeah,
discords and other social media things that you can hang out in. And there's a really awesome community that we'd love for you to be a part of. You just can't be a jerk.
right.
And some people are like, my bad. I thought I was being funny. Clearly wasn't. Missed the mark. And I won't do that again. you know?
Right. Well, it's cool because that allows people to be people, right? Because people are always going like people suck sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
like and people have bad days and people have different ways of taking that out. So it's like it's cool to see the opportunity to be better. And if you're that 5% of people that's not that person, kindly fuck off. You know
Yeah,
what I
then you can
mean?
just go away, and then that's fine. And then you just kind of go on with your day. And you want to know what happened? My day didn't change at all
Right.
because you got banned or anything like
Right.
that. Like that was about 5 seconds of my life, and I already forgot it happened. So,
Absolutely. Let's switch gears to your stream. Like, what is like? And you mentioned you're a variety streamer. So, what is kind of like the slew of games that you typically play on stream?
ooh, I like a little bit of everything. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
lie, but like super big fan of like adventure, open world RPG type things. Huge fan of the Fallout series. Huge fan of Borderlands, like those types of
Mm.
games.
Mhm.
We just finished obviously Last of Us 2 playthrough, which, I loved that game. We had
Yeah.
like God of War, stuff like that, but then also do a lot of like community party games, like any of the Jackbox games, Golf with
Yeah.
Friends, Fall Guys, like things like that, where you can kind of just chill but have fun at the same time. And then obviously Shooters. I love shooters. They don't necessarily have to be BRs. I was obsessed with OG Destiny. I put tons of
Ooh.
time into OG Destiny. I haven't even touched Destiny 2 because like I bought 2 copies of Destiny 2. Okay? 2 because I was so excited for when it released. I was like, I'm gonna play it on console and PC. And I was so hyped.
Of
I didn't even
course.
touch it because like the first 3 days, everybody was like, it is awful.
Yeah.
And then I was so sad that I didn't touch it. And then of course it was like OG Destiny all over again. It was like 3 DLCs in. Everyone was like, oh well now it's good. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a bummer. Maybe I'll go back to it now, but you know, played a ton of that. I mean, I just I like shooters, man.
I mean, there's something
I'm
that's
competitive.
they hit different. It really
Yeah.
I mean, no pun intended or pun intended, but they hit different, you know? Like I have never been like if I want to like watch a story or like it's like if I want to do a story game, I'm just going to go watch a movie and sometimes read a book. You know what I mean? Like if I want to go talk to all the individual characters, I'm going to watch Westworld. You know, like but like I want to play Halo, I want to strategize, I want to shoot people, I want to like I want to outthink them. I want to get in their head, you know? Like that's like my style too.
So you're not an Animal Crossing fan is what you're saying.
No.
I can't be your Switch friend.
No, no, you can't. You can't. Wait, you can't be it because I'm not an Animal Crossing person.
Well, what do you have a Switch?
No, I don't. Oh, you said Switch friend. I said Twitch friend. Okay, no, we
Switch
can't.
friend.
No, I actually sold it. I actually sold my entire Switch setup.
That means you didn't just play the new Paper Mario either, which was awesome.
Yep. Yep. I like my PC games. I like my console games. I mean, who knows? In time, I may evolve to mobile games or on the handheld devices, but
Well, you
I can,
technically can play Switch like a console.
I know, but
Just plug it in with an HDMI and then
I
just
just it's not Halo though.
yeah, it's
Like,
gotta be all Nintendo titles. Yeah, you're gonna have to play, Breath of the Wild though. You're missing out on that. Like I said, you're just missing out on the new Paper Mario, Animal Crossing. There's a lot.
I know. I
But
know.
those are
You
just
know,
the recent 3 that we've played.
so I've gone back and forth with this. Like I have gone back and forth where it's like I feel like I'm extremely closed-minded when it comes to a lot of games, but at the same time, I know exactly what makes me happy. And I don't and it's weird to like go back.
Warzone.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
100%. I'll tell you, Warzone is the first BR game that I have thoroughly enjoyed.
Yes.
Thoroughly. Yes.
Good. That
Yes.
makes me happy.
Yes. Because I didn't like I was just not around for H1Z1. It just didn't appeal. Like I was still in the Halo mindset. I didn't do that. But
Right.
like Blackout, I liked it with a few friends, but it still just didn't it just didn't hit, you know, like but
Okay.
this, I don't know
Warzone did
what
it.
I haven't felt the same way about a video game since I have about Halo 2 and trying to get to 50. Like that has been my favorite game. So if you ever want to drop in some duos, let me know. If you want to do some squads, trade, whatever, I'm down. I am obsessed with Warzone.
Yeah,
Yes.
Warzone's a good game. They did a good job with that. I was pleasantly surprised with Warzone.
Yeah. Yeah. I really was. Like in, besides the recent gun glitch, they've done pretty well. Like, I don't know if you've seen that, where
The
literally the
textures.
whole yeah, yeah.
I have had the demon in the gulag. There's like clips of it me being like, whoa, oh
I
god.
know.
Like, and it's just like closing in on you. I'm like, is that a person? I don't know. Is that I don't know I don't know what to do. The whole screen's black.
Exactly. I get so triggered when it happens because it's been happening for me the past like 3 to 4 days more often than any other time, and it just like it makes me like there's been so many times that it gets me to the point where it's like I just want to uninstall. I just want to like I'm so mad at the game, but I can't. What can you do?
That is a
But
little bit funny, to be fair.
it is. Did you see the Doctor Disrespect meme where it showed him as the main Call of Duty guy with the shards of the guns going?
No. That's good though.
I think the internet missed him. Like
Just a
he
little.
really took a void out when he stopped streaming on Twitch. You know, but yeah. So, oh yeah, BRs. That's really the first one that I enjoyed. That's cool. Like that you play. I'm interested at Rogue. When you start at Rogue and your time at Rogue, what did you do there? Like so, what was like your main role?
So I started off as just BR like I was
Mm-hmm.
for LG and Elevate. I kind of just ran at the time we had an H1 team, a PUBG team. We later got into Fortnite, so we had a bunch of teams that were just under me specifically.
Sure. Sure.
But then I recruited Dr. Lupo to Rogue.
Wow.
That was my pickup for the
Wow.
org, as well as and then once that happened, I kind of I started getting shifted into lots of other roles, and that's where like me never saying no kind of starts kicking in. I
Mhm.
became the point of contact for all things Lupo related for the rest of my time there. Everything like deal wise had to go through me or anything like that. I was our point of contact for some of the bigger celebrity investors. Anytime we had to work with them on the music side of things, um, I started managing most of just our sole like influencers only, the ones that weren't pros. I was managing
Mhm.
all of them. I was helping out with our educational junior rogue Fortnite program on that side of things, since that also kind of fell under Fortnite.
Yeah,
I also helped with our merchandising stuff. I helped out with a lot of our PR stuff. Um, I I don't know. I think I ended up doing almost everything that I could for that org.
that's amazing.
But at the end of it, I was just an assistant general manager that was just kind of doing whatever they needed me to do.
Got it. Got it. So, I mean, what was like so when you like just like I was fat I'm glad you touched on it because I wanted to ask you like what how long did the process take to pick up Lupo?
So
And what was that like?
um this was when Lupo was big in the Destiny community. This was before Fortnite was a thing, before the game even existed. And I was just kind of sitting there being like, he's going to be huge. And I did the same thing with Huskers. Huskers was another recruit to Rogue that was also mine. And he actually came with me from LG.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know. I saw like Ben is such a phenomenal human and he's just a talented person in general. And I knew that he was going to do big things. And I had to convince Rogue that there would eventually be some sort of like a financial return on that. And they always I think one of my favorite things about working with Rogue was the fact that they always just kind of trusted me. One of the reasons they hired me is because I had, I guess, a good like intuition when it comes to that type of stuff. So they were like, okay, let's figure out how to make this work. If that's what you think is a good pickup, we'll try and figure this out. And it probably only took us like 3 months,
Oh, wow.
maybe. But I mean, Ben and I are friends, and he also, he put a lot of trust in me in that situation as well to make sure that, he wasn't getting screwed over. So we tried to, on both ends, make sure that everybody was happy with the deal. And it was a home for a lot of us for a long time.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's a huge pickup, and it's like because he's. I mean, I don't follow him religiously, but it's like I mean, if you're on Twitter, you're gonna see, and you're in the streaming community, you're gonna see his name. It's just he's that big of a personality.
He's a hard worker. He puts in so much effort.
Yeah, yeah. He seems like a bit of a troll too. I love his like little announcements for like
He's
Logitech.
actually hilarious. He is so quick-witted and so funny.
Yeah, I think that's like what makes it like because like that's just my first impression of him. I'm like this dude is just a complete goofball, but he's like really quick, and I think that that's like what makes a really good streamer is like they're
Yeah.
extremely quick with their wit. Yeah. But, when it comes like so, like you mentioned, like the financial investment, like you're gonna see a return, like, and you mentioned there's like some, or you just alluded to, it, but like there, it sounds like there are some like shady deals that do go on behind esports and esports companies and content teams. Like, how does, I guess, like what makes like, I know Rogue seems like a really good one. Like, what is it that it takes to like make a successful company like that? Like, because that's something that's like a very like, not talked about thing? Like, 'cause there's a lot of shady esports orgs, and there's a lot of, like, just really solid ones. Like, what does it take, and, like, what makes Rogue different, or, like, what made Rogue different for you?
There's just good people that work at
Yeah,
Rogue. I think part of it is that the esports, like I said, esports industry is so new that for up until probably this past year, honestly, it was almost like it was just kind of going unchecked. There
yeah,
weren't too many official lawyers working on things like some obviously like some of the tier 1 orgs had already had that stuff in place, but
sure.
generally whether it was an agency repping pros or orgs or anything like that, one, you have to think that you're dealing with some of the youngest professionals in a professional environment, right?
Yeah,
Like average esports pro age is young, and
yeah,
these people are not legal experts and they can't afford legal experts. So a lot of the times It's just kind of
Mm,
boilerplate contracts that people don't really know what they're reading, but in their head, they're a pro. If they
right.
sign this piece of paper, they're literally paid to play video games. And that is so many people's dream that it's almost like the blinders go on. Plus, they just don't know any better. They
Right.
really don't.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
don't know to protect themselves. And I think that that's what was happening super early on with esports. But a lot of the orgs at this point have switched from being started by, a 24-year-old in his basement to now being full-fledged corporations that are either owned by a massive parent company or that have just turned into a massive corporation themselves. And it's a full-fledged business as opposed to a hobby turned into a career type thing. So
Got it.
there are so many there's those outside influences that are starting to come in and kind of shape from the standard,
Mm,
other industries that were busy. You're seeing a lot of executives coming in from traditional sports to now become executives for esports related companies, whether it's video games or orgs
yeah.
themselves. You're also seeing professional sports teams investing in the esports orgs. And that helped a lot over time with corporate structure and starting to tweak a lot of those things. Cause I think even giving some of the orgs from back in the day the benefit of the doubt. I don't even know if they knew that they were giving out shady deals because they didn't know any better. Like I said,
Right.
a lot of these orgs were started by very young people with
Yeah.
no business experience, no legal experience, and they went online and got a boilerplate contract and hoped that it worked, and nobody ever questioned them for 5 or 6 years, and they just kind of wrote it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just people are now getting more educated. It's becoming more mainstream, and those types of slip ups aren't allowed anymore because they not only are
Yeah.
they harmful to your employee at that point. It's not just like a player anymore. That's now your employee, but it's also harmful to the business because while they might have been bad contract deals for the players, they weren't protecting the business side of things either. So they
Right.
have definitely revamped everything, and especially when you have like the type of professional personalities that are running things at this point, like when you see, Nate Shot, like that is that's not an org. That
Yeah.
is a full-fledged, like on a whole other level
I know.
company. And so it's just so different than it was 4 or 5 years ago that I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of that stuff is really getting phased out.
That's awesome, and, and you mentioned Nade, like, I ended up loving that last No Camping collection so much, I went and bought all of it resale. Like, I paid
Yes.
the overinflated price to buy that shit resale, and it killed my bank account, but I'm like when I got it, I'm
But
like,
it's so good.
it was so amazing, like, the stuff that that man is doing is absolutely phenomenal, and I will pay any price to continue to support that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I so one question I've had, on esports team, you mentioned like there's a lot of like now more than ever, there's a lot of outside investment. You mentioned the sports teams, outside influencers, personalities. Besides that, what type of how do these companies make money? Like it's like because it just seems like okay, besides advertisements and besides this like investment, like how do they actually become profitable?
I'm still trying to figure that out myself, honestly. If you can crack that nut, then you'll be the next millionaire. Because
Yeah,
I mean, obviously you see I'm sure each org does it differently, and you can see
sure.
on for like 100 Thieves side of things, they are very merch heavy, right? There's a ton
Yeah.
of revenue coming in from that on the merch side of things. And just in general, merch is always a revenue stream for any company, whether it's an individual streamer or it's an
Mhm.
actual org. Merch is one of those revenue streams, ad sales, sponsorship deals.
Yeah.
It's literally the same type of revenue streams that you could come up with for an individual in the content creation side of things. It's just kind of scaled out bigger
Yeah.
for orgs. It's just it becomes that much harder for those deals to become a thing, right? Because they become more expensive the bigger everything gets.
Yeah.
So it's just about, who's the best salesman, who's the best at who's the most connected, who's the most networked, because that's the same concept for the investments. The investments are also about networking. It's who do you know
Yeah.
who has pockets deep enough for that stuff, because that's a very ingrained part of esports is the investor side of things. You always see like the big names coming in
Mhm.
for different orgs, who works with who invests where, and that always brings a little bit of like the bougie factor too,
Sure.
because like if you're
Sure.
like, well, I mean that Drake,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Rogue had Steve Aoki and Imagine Dragons, like it's like y- you kind of got to get a little bit of the cool factor going for yourself too.
That's right. I was reading an article in the Esports Observer, like with Ninja, and it's like he has transformed being like he's not just a big content creator. He is actually getting to that level where he is an actual celebrity. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
he's on.
100%.
It's so cool to see him do his thing. And that man literally transformed gaming, in my opinion, for the entire. Like, I don't care if you love him, I don't care if you hate him for his personality,
100%.
but like, you can't knock his hustle. Like, the dude has like one of the most relentless hustles I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, work ethic is insane, and what he did to make gaming and esports more mainstream is just massive for the industry. And that's what we need is we need more of that getting put in front of people so that people have a better understanding of it, so that that stupid stereotype of us all being like
Yes.
45-year-old
Preach.
single white dudes living at home with their parents in the basement playing video games all day. Like, no, do hello?
Right.
No,
Right.
that's not the stereotype anymore. We are a very diverse community of people. I'm a Puerto Rican woman in the gaming industry. Like, this is like it's not what it used to be anymore.
No.
I think if like people can accept that and also realize that it's also not, it's definitely a slower on this side of things, but it's not as
Sure.
unhealthy as it used to be. People are working on that too. There's so many people who are like fitness gamers where like that is their brand and that's their genre is teaching
Mhm.
people how to be healthy. There's esports doctors, there's esports like sports therapists. Like it's a whole different ball game at this point.
It really is. Like, and I think the more like quote unquote normal activities and the more normal positions we can infuse into this, like the better it's gonna be. Like,
Yeah.
because that's, in my opinion, that's how you start changing the conversation to the people who necessarily don't understand the gaming world. Like, even for my current job, I was interview based not interview, but like had our first phone call with a client. He's doing like a woodworking business, and he was like, "Yeah." I was like, well, "What got you motivated to do that?" And he's like, "Well, I was always good with this. It's not like I'm just gonna sit at home and play video games." And I'm just like,
Well,
"Hmm." Really
I
now?
hate
Okay.
to say that.
I kind of just that one. You got to figure out where to bite your tongue and where to say
Right,
it. But
right.
that one, I was kind of just like, okay, like we'll help you get your stuff. Like don't worry about it. But it was interesting because it still shows where the common mind is at. Like it shows where that person is at today, or where a lot of people are at. So I mean,
Oh yeah. I
he
mean, I mean, my to be fair, my parents adjusted very quickly, but at the same time,
Mhm.
they went from having a daughter that was in law school
Yeah.
to a daughter that works in video games. You know,
I,
so it is definitely a shock. But now you've got I'll be doing a broadcast and my mom will sit there and be like, "This is the team I'm picking for the next round. I think they're gonna win." And like they teach themselves every single game that I work in, and they're like my biggest fans. And I think if you can just kind of just flip that switch in people's minds, it'll be totally different.
It will be, and I think I saw that tweet that you posted the other day about your mom, like, getting involved with the prediction picks.
Yeah.
That's
She
so
she
cool.
loves it. She loves it.
That's so cool. That is absolutely, yeah, that's amazing that you're able to kinda transform that, and that's, like, the idea, like, because Ninja, I remember watching an interview, he mentioned, he's like, people really want to see you succeed. And then, like, right up to that moment when you succeed, then everyone wants to tear you down. And then he's like, at the same time, he's like, I'm going on the Ellen show and I think I'm going to be talking about gaming and my passion, but I'm literally just playing a grown woman how to play Fortnite and how to use an Xbox controller. And he's like, that sucked. He's like, but those are the types of sacrifices that he is making. Yeah, you could look at it. He's on the Ellen show and he's getting all this publicity, but it's like, if that's not what he really loves, that's probably a painful experience for him to do that, and he's
Oh
taking a
yeah.
major thing for the team here. Yeah.
It's also like I said, and the bigger you get,
Mhm.
the worse it is and the worse it feels. But like when you're that well known, it's that much harder to deal with all of the awful people on the internet. And like to have
Yeah.
to ignore that all the time is not easy. And it will get in your head and you will, need time away to yourself to kind of mentally reset,
Yeah.
like build that fortitude back up. And anyone that is at that level, any of those big personalities that everybody can
Yeah.
kind of just think of off the top of their head when it comes to esports and gaming, they're all sacrificing a lot of themselves in their journey. Yes, they might be very comfortable now, as far as, the financial side of things go,
Sure,
but they
sure.
also worked really hard to get there and they deal with a lot of bullshit that no one else deals with to maintain that. So
Yeah.
I think everybody just kind of needs to ease up a little bit.
Well, yeah, and because people don't realize, like, that Ninja was a Halo pro.
Oh,
before
yeah.
any of it,
Yep.
and it
He
was
was still
like,
playing Halo when I was his manager.
yeah, because you mentioned the H1Z1 and getting it, like, I was like, yeah, you probably knew him right around the Halo time. Yeah.
We were it was, like, towards the end of it, and we would always try to have to, like, work around if he was playing both games at the same event,
Yeah.
like, scheduling and making sure it all worked, and
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm saying he's a hard worker. He's sitting there being a pro in multiple video games that are not the same, and I don't care what anybody says, that is hard to do.
mhm.
And he never once complained, literally, never once complained. If I was like, "Okay, you guys gotta do media right after this, you need to go shoot, like, this picture here, this content over here," he'd be like, "All right, just tell me where to go. Tell me where to go," every time.
That's so cool. That's cool to hear that, that's cool to hear, like, the story of him behind the scenes, because that's not I mean, I got a vibe from him, like, just by watching him and by seeing his hustle, but it's cool to, like, actually hear that from you, you know?
No, he was great.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of the most entertaining Halo players in my opinion to watch, like, and so it was cool to see, like, his people don't see that. It's like he didn't just magically appear with Drake. He just didn't magically, like, do this, like, I can only imagine the amount of hard work that it took behind the scenes, and, like, people these days, especially kids, they don't see any of the history. They only see the glitz and the glam and, like, all the stuff that they're getting to experience now,
Yeah,
you
and I
know?
mean, it's fame in the esports and gaming world is the same as fame in any other industry. You
Yeah.
need to have the smallest dash of good luck and good timing, and then combine that with hard work and with content creation, specifically some form of entertainment, whether that's your personality, whether that's your skill level, whether that's the form or type of content you're putting out. You need to be
Yeah.
very well rounded with that little sprinkle of fairy dust that's kind of pushes you in the right direction, and then what you do with it from there is on you.
Right, and I think but that going back to your story, like, that's I don't think there's really any dash of luck. I mean, like, that's, like, what we put out into this universe is what we get back, and it's like there's no coincidence that, like, people just so happen to see your master's thesis. Like, there, there's no coincidence that you just happen to get Dr. Lupo. It's like you built this all yourself, like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I struggle with taking all of the credit because, like, at the same
sure,
time, I wouldn't have gotten, analysis opportunities if ESPN, if I knew a friend who worked at ESPN was like, "You'd be great for this. Are you cool if I put you up for it?" And I was like, "Yeah," and
yeah,
it worked. If I didn't have that, then I wouldn't be doing analysis or Apex Legends or anything like that. If I didn't win the money in the tournament, then I wouldn't have gotten any on-camera opportunities because I don't even know if I would have gone down that path. I wouldn't have been esports talent. Like if I didn't meet who I met at the very first TwitchCon, I might not be working for esports orgs. Like it's just
yeah,
I once the opportunity presented itself, I worked my ass off to make sure that I got it and kept it. But there is a little bit of luck in the opportunities being put in front of you. It's just about if you're going to go after it once it's there.
sure. I mean, I'd argue that a little bit, but because most people get the opportunity, but they don't have that what you had, and like it's very similar to like my story as well. Like, opportunities are presented to people on a day in and day out basis,
Oh
but
yeah.
people do not see it.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think there's a shortage of any opportunity. This is a very abundant world that we live in, and especially
Yes.
now with the internet. It is an even bigger world that literally
Mhm.
requires nothing but a little bit of hard work and like a little bit of willingness to like do what you actually want to do and eat some shit for a little while and like maybe take a few L's and like
Oh yeah.
figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that argument, but I like challenging that one as well. Yeah.
I'll
I
give it. Hey, if you're going to give me more credit, that's fine. That's fine.
exactly, exactly. I gotta ask, GlitterXplosion, where did that name come from?
Oh my god, I love this story.
Yeah.
Everybody always asks, this is such a random name, I guess.
Mhm.
But so I was saying how I kind of grew up playing video games and I played a lot of video games with my dad. One of the games that we used to play a ton together, like one of our favorite games to play together, was actually World of Tanks.
Oh,
If you
okay.
know what World of Tanks is.
I know what the game is, but I never played it.
Yeah, so I mean essentially you go onto different maps and each map has a different amount of tank classes. There's usually like destroyers or artillery or scouts, and there'll be like one scout on this map plus two TDs, one arty, and like you kind of like then there's like small, medium, large essentially tanks, and you kind of just PvP,
Yeah.
and whoever loses their team of tanks first loses. Super basic, but I loved the game so much. And my dad and I played a ton together. When we were trying to create my account for it, I couldn't come up with the name at all. I couldn't come up with anything because I'm not very creative, honestly. And my dad was trying to help me, and he was just sitting there being like, "Wouldn't it be cool if every time you blew up a tank, it exploded with glitter so that they knew a girl killed them?" And I was like, "Write it down. Write it down, Dad. You did it." And I've literally just stuck with it ever since.
That is so cool. Because I saw it, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to put two and two together. Like you play all these games, you're an analyst, you're like you're really well. I'm like, where the fuck did glitter explosion come from?
Yeah, it's weird.
I love the story. It's funny because like my name is very random. It's like my mom always called me her Boona as a kid, and I was so ashamed of it growing up. But it was like,
Why? That's so
oh,
cute.
but as a kid, I just
Dude,
as you know,
parents are
as
there to embarrass you. That's the whole point.
I know, but I hated it, and I would only as a kid, I would only allow her to call me that behind closed doors. Like,
Yeah.
she could never call me that in public, and so it was something I was so ashamed of, but I'm like, "You know what? If I'm gonna be a creator, I wanna be authentic,"
Yes.
and bona fide is another word for authentic, so why not embrace what I used to hide from? You know what I mean? It's like,
I like it.
it's like, that, like, random quirky name that just sticks with people, you know?
Yeah, I love it. Parents
Yeah.
parents are just giving us gamer tags left and right, and they don't even know it.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. How is you like so when it comes to your name, like how have you like do you like have merch? Do you have emotes? Do you have like does everything kind of reflect glitter in your stream or in your stuff?
So it's less. I mean, it kind of does.
Yeah.
Everything we've got a glitter emote. We'll have like a very specific like sparkle emote. My colors are typically pink and blue, so everything is kind of pink and blue. Um, and it's like we always add a little bit of sparkle to some of the emotes, and then the rest are like community related or like stream inside joke related or anything like that.
That's
Um,
cool.
but I'm actually in the process of doing a full like a little rework. I'm having a rework done to my whole graphics package this month, changing it up a little bit. It'll all be the same like general branding. We're just gonna switch the colors a tad and kind of make some changes to the overall like overlays on the stream and things like that. Um, but I don't know. It works really well for branding. Honestly, it's something that you can use pretty creatively when it comes to merch.
I can imagine. Like it's like that like cuz glitter can go on a lot of different things like that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So when I wanna get to like to the point where you're at today. Like you left Rogue. It seemed like you had a really good
Yeah.
spot there. Like what what motivated you to leave? Kinda like talk me through that.
So realistically, I never wanted to leave Rogue. I would have
Yeah.
probably just, set up shop and died at that company if I could have.
Mhm.
But I really have been wanting to pursue more and more freelance work, and it was starting to pick up a lot over probably the past year. So essentially, I was doing full time Rogue from like 7 o'clock in the morning until about 4 p.m. I would
Mhm.
give myself like an hour to do dinner really quickly and kind of
Yeah.
decompress. And then I would stream from 5 p.m. to like 10 p.m. And that would be my daily schedule, with the exception of events. And then events would kick in. And before COVID, I had to travel. So I would usually
Yeah.
travel on like a super early Thursday morning or super late Wednesday night so that I would get a full Wednesday workday in,
Mhm.
travel on Thursday, but still have to do all of my work remotely and do a rehearsal for show on Thursday while still working remotely. Then usually do LAN Friday, Saturday, Sunday, travel Monday back home and still have to finish out a full workday and then get back on and stream for the rest of the night. And I was
Wow.
doing this for a year and a half, maybe, as like my full-time schedule. And it was manageable because I was still picking up a little bit as far as like the
Yeah.
freelance work goes, and the stream schedule is essentially down to me. So if there's ever a day where I really needed a day off, I could kind of take that because it's my choice. But I had just been having so much fun doing all of it, and I was growing, but I was only able to commit 40% of my time to it, right?
Sure, sure.
Because I still had a full-time job, and that's what was paying the bills, and I loved working with everybody at my company, and I enjoyed what I was doing. And so there was never a clear point where I was like I could quit this job or this job because I loved everything. So I didn't want to stop any of it
Yeah.
either. But it got to the point where this year specifically, weirdly enough, even though everything went remote
Mhm.
because of COVID, I started picking up more and more freelance work. And there's never been a time in like my whole 4 or 5 years in esports where I've been able to just focus on myself and my brand. I've always focused on myself and my brand for a portion of my time and a
Sure.
portion of my efforts because I've had so many other things that been trying to juggle.
Yeah, yeah,
And I had just booked the World League for PUBG Mobile, and I was really excited about that. And that was something that I was wanting to like deep dive and make sure that I knew a lot about before the whole World League kind of started up.
yeah, yeah.
And the amount of time that the World League was going to take weekly was essentially going to be I probably could have managed it if I'm being totally honest, but I would have also worked myself to death. I would have
Yeah,
been done. By the end of those 30 days, I would have needed like a full week of reset because I would have been so exhausted.
yeah.
And I didn't want to have to do that to myself. So I made the very hard decision and very like risky choice to see if I could be good enough on my own and support myself financially enough with just whatever I can do
Yeah.
by myself, with whatever I can do with my brand, whatever I can build for myself. Um, because I felt like I had gotten to the point where I could probably give myself a year to see what I could do. And if I can't figure it out in a year, then I have to go back and like get a full-time salary job. But if I can really give 100% to just me, I wanted to see what I could make happen. And I made that choice, like literally like officially like signed the paperwork on PUBG Mobile the next day, then booked a Netflix gig, then booked a Fortnite gig, then like and it's one of those things where I was like, I don't know if the universe is repaying me or what, but let's see how this goes. This might be okay.
So cool. That's incredible. Like that's like because like you don't see that a whole lot, or you see people do it, but it's like then you'll see like it's like there's no backing behind it. It's like they choose to do it at such an early part in their career, but it's like
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, but
very, very
to
early.
yeah, and I'm like, oh, like there's of course the fantasy of like, yeah, I want to quit and become a full time streamer,
Right.
but it's like okay, but do you really have, like, the community built up, the brand built, the, like, just, like, are you at that point in your career yet? And I've had to ask myself that, like, a lot of times, and it's like the answer, it's getting closer to yes, but it's not I mean, at the same time, it's not even anywhere close, you know? So it's just
It's also just such an unstable career that like
yeah, yeah,
that was one of the reasons that I took so long to even make the decision because I was like, well, I might have a good 3, 4, even 6 months. I might have a great
yeah,
6 months, but I could then have a terrible 6 months after that. Am
mhm,
I set up enough that if that is what happens, am I okay with it?
yeah,
Like, will I be able to still support myself financially if that's what happens? And so, like, there was constantly like
yeah.
that voice in the back of my head that was like, don't do it yet. Don't, unless you really, really have to, don't do it. And then I kind of just got to the point where I was like, I'm tired. I am so drained because I just put so much energy into so many different things when I could just put energy into one and I've never done that. I feel like I just got to take the leap. I just got to try and see what happens.
That's incredible. How, like so now that you're here today, like, are you so, like I guess the question is, like, how happy are you today now that you've done that?
Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. Literally, and this is like not a slight to Rogue at all because like I said I loved working for them and I loved everybody that I
Yeah,
worked with, but I have
yeah,
never felt like less stressed because anything at this point that is put on me is my own doing. If it's stress that I'm feeling, it's because I've stressed myself out. I screwed
sure.
something up for myself. Whereas like a lot of the times when you have a job, you're potentially stressed out because there's so many other people involved and so many other things that could potentially go wrong or people that you're trying to make happy,
Yeah,
especially when you're like a little bit of a type A psycho perfectionist like me. So I would sit there and just be
really.
like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god." Now I can do essentially whatever I want, and anything that's bad that's to my own detriment is my own fault, and I have to fix it. And or anything that's really good, I got it myself and I worked my butt off to get it and I did that for myself. And like it's so fulfilling and it's way more than I thought it was going to be, or
Mm,
at least maybe this quickly. I think I had assumed that I was going to quit and then kind of be stressed for like 3 months and then wait
yeah,
and then be like, what do I do? Was this a bad choice? And instead it's been the exact opposite. And I feel very lucky that that's how it worked out. But also I'm having so much fun doing all of it and like meeting new people and it's phenomenal.
that's awesome. That's so awesome because so if you were to give, like based on your, because I'm a firm believer, like you can read a book, you can read things on the internet, but like to me, experience is always the best, is
It
always the
is.
best teacher. It's always the best one. Like
Mhm.
so if someone like any words, if someone's like looking to make that jump, is there anything that you could tell them from your experience that to like watch out for, to like make sure that they have in place, or like I guess like just give any sort of like experience or advice to them if they're considering making the jump that you did?
I think especially when you're going into like a fully self-employed type situation, the best thing you can do for yourself is be your own harshest critic, and not in like a negging on yourself way, but you
Mm,
need to be very realistic when you become self-employed. If you're going to do that, like I said, you need to have backup plans in place. Make sure you're financially set up for a period of time that you're okay. If everything falls to pieces, you have at least like a cushion there that you give yourself time to figure things out. You
yeah,
need to not just go into self-employment willy-nilly. You need to have goals set ahead of time. Be like, okay, once I have time for myself, these are the things I want to accomplish. These are the
yeah,
things that I want to get done. Because if you just do it and then just kind of float, you won't improve or grow or make yourself better, make your content better. There needs to be a list of things that you want to get done or you want to achieve, and you need to constantly be working towards them. And then once you accomplish them, you can check them off your list and you can add something new. But you always have to be working for
yeah,
something,
yeah,
because once you start coasting, I mean, unless you're literally at 30,000 subs a month, you can't really coast. Like
yeah, yeah,
you can always be meeting new people, trying out new games, even trying new games is a community growth, right? You're going to reach
yeah.
some people that you haven't had before. There's just so many small things that you can do to continue to set yourself up, and always remember you're not the only person on the internet. There are tens of thousands other jabronis trying to do the exact same thing. So, you need to bring something to the table that is unique in some fashion, or that is um entertaining. And like I said, entertainment doesn't have to always be being loud and hilarious. It can be educational, it can be skill based, it can be alternative content based, because you can literally stream
Yeah,
anything on Twitch at this point. um so it's finding all of those ways that will make you stand out, because it's really hard when there's so many other people who want to do the exact same thing and will do the exact same thing. And there are people who will put in more time, and you don't want to, kind of lose out in that turtle race, because everybody's fighting for the same thing.
that's right. I love when a hit like that. I saw a tweet from Harris Heller. It was just like, I'm not
I
gonna
love
fail because
Harris.
someone. Yeah, I do too. One of the coolest guys I think I've seen on here. Like, he's like, I'm not gonna fail because someone outworked me, and like
Exactly.
that was one of the most inspiring tweets I think I ever seen, and it shows through his work. He's not one of those people that just says a buzzword or a buzz phrase or a motivational thing, but it's like the amount of work that that dude has put in is astronomical.
Harris
You
is a
know,
badass.
yeah, yeah, that stream playlist, phenomenal. Like, his first stuff, I loved it, I dug it, it just wasn't for my stream, but, like, his last couple, like, albums, I guess, if you will, just
The
like, "This shit
EDM and the synthwave.
slaps!
Those are the two new ones, EDM and synthwave.
This shit slaps!" Like, I love it, you know? It's on every one of my streams, but you mentioned, like, having like, I love how you said, like, like, when you quit or when you decide to go for your like, go in for yourself, like, you wanna have goals, you wanna have things to set your sights towards, you know, what are some of those sights right now for you?
Well, so YouTube is actually one of the platforms that I never really had time to dig into, because I just
Mhm.
didn't have time to make my own additional content outside of literally streaming.
Yeah.
So YouTube is definitely something that I'm going to be deep diving, and I'm really excited about that. Um, I also had and I still will consider TikTok depending on how that all goes
Yeah.
with everything that
Yeah.
we've seen going on for
Yeah.
that platform. Only because I'm a huge proponent of like kind of like spreading the wealth. Like if you're going to be creating content, there's no reason to not be putting it on multiple platforms.
Sure.
And there's because demographically, each platform is dramatically different, whether
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
regionally based or age based. And so the people that you're going to be hitting, totally, totally different. And if you want to have any sort of stability on the internet, your community reach is incredibly important, whether
Yeah.
that's from a literal numbers perspective that you have to give to sponsors in order to, make sponsored posts and make money off of that, or from a casting a wider net to grow things like a live stream and then there's additional revenue streams there because your CCV gets higher, or same thing with growing your views on your YouTube content because then your revenue's higher off of that. So
Mhm.
that is that's one of the things that I'm really going to work on. I've been trying to be way more active now that I have the time to be active on Instagram. Instagram's a hugely like monetizable platform if you do it the right way, and so that's something that I'm like working on getting better at as well. But I think YouTube is going to be a huge deep dive for me, and then also being able to stream just more because the fact that I have a full day to, now get time in on a stream is very different than what I had before.
Sure.
That is something that it'll also allow me to play more games, like different games, and that I'm excited about because I haven't been able to just like game like that for a very long time. Plus, I work out a lot, so I'm going to be putting a crap ton of time into fitness related stuff, and then I'll probably somehow integrate that into all of my platforms as well because I think that's like another thing that's important for people. If you're trying to be a brand, you need to realize your brand doesn't have to only be gaming. It can be so many other
Yep.
things and still be gaming 85% of the time, but
Right.
it can be creative, it can be lifestyle, it can be fitness, like it can be cooking. It can there's
Right.
so many things that you can add on that kind of make you a more well-rounded content machine essentially.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's like, it's fine. Like we all are brought here for the same reason. Like we all love video games, but it's like everyone that comes here likes a lot more than just video games.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool thing that you're in court. It's like, okay, you don't really have to do anything that drastically different. It's just like incorporate what I already do
Exactly.
into what I'm currently doing. It's just I remember when I first started streaming, it's like, I'm like, what's my personality gonna be? I'm like, I look back at my childhood, it's like, I can't tell you how many times I yelled and screamed at the TV and got so passionate about it. And I'm like, okay, just be yourself, dude. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what you did before. Like, why are you holding back now? But it's a cool deal. So I gotta ask, like, you sound like you're already doing your thing. That's like, I mean, you're literally doing exactly what you want to do. You get to play video games for money. You get to cast. You get to do this. Like, is there anything more that you want to achieve? Is there anything more that you want to be when you grow up?
I think in the long run, and I always said it from the beginning, um, if it's possible, I would like to be uh, one of the few female founded, owned, and run esports organizations.
Hmm.
And that's kind of like the ultimate goal. If I can ever get there, if I can ever, figure out a way to either raise enough money to do so or have enough people backing me and be able to kind of create a company in that way. Because obviously, I mean, I can't be in front of the camera forever. And I
Right.
have so much behind the camera experience that I feel very capable in a lot of areas that I think most people don't necessarily have the same type of experience in.
Yep.
So that would be like the ultimate long term goal.
We have very similar goals, except of course I'm like, I'm not a woman, so like,
Wait, you're not?
I'm not. Strange to say,
Oh,
I put
man.
more products in my beard than you probably do in your hair, though. I will say that. I'm pretty proud of that now. I
Hey,
used to be
self
embarrassed by
care
it.
is just self care, okay?
It is. It is extremely important.
It
It is
is.
extremely important. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna call you Lauren. I like calling people by their first name. It's been an absolute treat to have you on here today.
This has been
I've
so much fun.
awesome, awesome. So for the fans who are not following you, you have a lot of followers, but the people who are not, where can they find you? Where are you the most active? Where do you want them to be?
You can actually find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube. Literally everything is Glitter Explosion with an X instead of an E at the beginning of the word.
Fantastic. Same name everywhere. That's such a hard thing to do nowadays.
Oh, you have no idea. That took me a long time.
That is incredibly cool. Well, we're gonna end it today. Again, Lauren, you have a fantastic day.